The smell of turpentine and oil paint filled my nostrils, just as it had the day I died. My hand hovered over the canvas, brush poised, and for a moment I forgot everything except the stroke of genius that had always been mine. Almost there, I murmured to myself, brushing a streak of deep crimson across the folds of the drapery in my painting. It was the painting that would have earned Pietro all the fame he'd stolen. My fame, really, but I was alive. And this time he would not rob me. The memory hit me suddenly. The cellar, the damp stone walls, the empty bowl beside me, Pietro's smirk as he called the world to admire the masterpiece he had claimed as his own. I gritted my teeth and let my brush fall to the floor. "Not again," I whispered. "Not this time." A knock at the studio door startled me. I spun, expecting the ghost of my betrayal, but instead, it was Marco, my young apprentice. "Miss Lucia?" he asked cautiously. "The patrons, they want to see the new piece." I exhaled. "Then let them wait. I have unfinished business." Marco hesitated. "Is Pietro?" "I'll deal with him when the time comes," I said sharply. "For now, help me prepare the canvas for the unveiling." Hours passed as I mixed pigments, each stroke of the brush a pulse of defiance. I painted with memory and rage, every shadow in the folds of the figure whispering my vengeance. I would let the world see Pietro's deceit. Later, as the sun dipped behind the studio windows, casting golden light across the room, there came a knock. Heavier this time. "Lucia," a voice said. It was Lorenzo de Medici, tall, imposing, yet somehow carrying an ease that made him seem like he belonged in the very light bathing my studio. I froze, paint-stained hands clutching the brush. "Signore de Medici," I said formally, masking the fire in my chest. "To what do I owe this?" "You've been busy," he interrupted gently, eyes scanning the canvas. "But tell me, who painted this?" I lifted my chin. "I did." His eyes narrowed, not with suspicion, but curiosity. "And yet Pietro claims credit?" I froze. How could he know? He would never admit it. But the truth will come out. Soon. Lorenzo's gaze softened. "I think I can see the soul in this painting, Lucia. Pietro cannot hide behind it, not from me." My heart caught in my chest. No one had ever recognized me like this. I swallowed and nodded. "Then perhaps you'll see the truth when the unveiling comes." He inclined his head. "I shall be there." Alone again, I turned back to my canvas. This time, the strokes were more deliberate, more daring. I painted not only for art, but for justice. The hidden confession, the subtle lines, the clever deception only visible in the right light, all of it would finally expose Pietro. And when it did, he would fall. And I would rise. The rebirth had begun. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the studio floor, illuminating every speck of dust and the faint smudges of pigment on my fingers. I stood before my canvas, brush in hand, and allowed the memories to wash over me. Pietro's lies, the cellar, the years of stolen glory. My chest tightened, but this time, fear did not follow. Only purpose. Marco appeared at the doorway, frowning. "Miss Lucia, Pietro has sent a messenger. He says he wants to see the painting before the Medici arrive." I smiled thinly. "He wants to gloat. Should we?" Marco began, but I silenced him with a shake of my head. "No," I said, voice low. "Let him look all he wants. Every glance he takes will bind him tighter to his own downfall. And I will be the one to unveil the truth." I added the final touches to the hidden confession, painting subtle lines in the shadows that only the Medici would notice under the right light. Pietro believed his trickery would remain invisible. He was wrong. Hours later, a messenger arrived. Pietro's letter was smug, arrogant, dripping with entitlement. "I trust your hand has not ruined the canvas I will finally claim. Be ready to witness my genius." I crushed it in my hand. Genius. I muttered, lips curling. The world is about to see what true genius looks like, and it is mine. Then the sound of horse hooves clattering across the cobblestones heralded Lorenzo's arrival. He entered the studio with his usual quiet authority, eyes immediately scanning the painting. "Magnificent," he murmured, and I caught the faintest edge of a smile on his lips. And yet, I sense there is more than meets the eye. I froze, heart racing. "You?" "I know Pietro is not the artist," he said calmly, stepping closer. "And I intend to make sure he does not claim what is not his." I blinked. No one had ever spoken so plainly about my torment. Not Marco. Not anyone. And here, Lorenzo de Medici, powerful, untouchable, recognized me. Truly, completely. My voice caught. "I've planned everything. The unveiling, the confession. Under the light, only you will notice. Only the right audience will see." He nodded, his gaze holding mine. "Then we will ensure the truth emerges at the perfect moment. But be careful, Lucia. Pietro will do everything to ruin you before then." The thought of him, smug and untouchable, made my blood boil. "Let him try," I said, gripping the brush with renewed determination. "Every stroke I make is a step toward justice. Every shadow conceals a trap he will walk right into." Lorenzo's eyes softened. "And I will be here to see that he does not escape it." The tension in the studio was electric. I could sense the hidden war beginning. Pietro would arrive, expecting to intimidate, to coerce, to claim victory. But this time I was ready. That evening, as the studio emptied, Lorenzo lingered near the doorway. "You work with fire, Lucia. Do not burn yourself before the flames reach him." I glanced up at him, catching the intensity in his gaze. "And if I do?" He smiled faintly, stepping closer. "Then I will catch you." A shiver ran down my spine. Trust and desire mingled in a dangerous, intoxicating way. For the first time since my rebirth, I did not feel alone. The night stretched before me like a canvas yet to be painted. And in my heart, I knew Pietro's reckoning was coming. And Lorenzo, perhaps something more than admiration would bloom before this chapter ended. The morning of the unveiling arrived like a thunderclap, bright sunlight streaming through the tall windows of my studio, catching dust in golden streaks that looked almost like fire. My hands shook only slightly as I prepared the painting for presentation, adjusting the easel just so, knowing Pietro would arrive any moment to claim what he had no right to. Marco hovered near the door, fidgeting nervously. "Miss Lucia, he's here." "Pietro." He brought guards. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. I could hear the smooth confidence in his voice, the way he carried himself as though the world had always been his. I allowed a slow, deliberate smile to curl on my lips. "Let him see," I whispered. "Every look he gives will be his own undoing." The studio door creaked open, and there he was, Pietro, taller than I remembered, eyes sharp, a smirk plastered across his face. Behind him, two lackeys loomed, grim and silent. Lucia," he said, voice dripping mockery. "How quaint that you still paint like a child, pretending you matter. Do you even realize whose masterpiece this is?" I lifted my chin. "I do. And the world will, too, when it sees what you could never create." He laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. Bold words for someone who might starve in a cellar for daring to disagree with me. "I survived that cellar," I said, my voice steady. "And this time, I control the canvas. The strokes, the shadows, the truth, all mine, not yours." Pietro's smirk faltered slightly. He stepped closer, leaning toward me with predatory confidence. "You threaten me with what? A clever painting? The world adores my name. Yours is invisible." At that moment, Lorenzo entered. His presence alone shifted the air, the room contracting around his authority. He gave Pietro one long, unflinching look. Not for long. I felt a thrill of relief mixed with something dangerously warm. Lorenzo's calm presence steadied me, made me taller, braver. Pietro's arrogance faltered as he registered the shift. "What do you mean?" Pietro demanded. "I mean," Lorenzo said, voice low, deliberate, "that we know. Every stolen stroke, every hidden brushwork, every lie you've told to claim her genius. I stepped forward, letting my hand hover near the edge of the canvas. You'll see it for yourself at the unveiling tonight. The confession is there, hidden in plain sight. Under the right light, truth is unavoidable. Pietro laughed again, but this time the edge was nervous. And you think a little trick with light will humiliate me? I am untouchable. You are about to be touchable, Lorenzo replied evenly. His gaze met mine for a fraction of a second. A spark, silent and intimate, a reassurance that I was not alone in this fight. For the rest of the day, I worked tirelessly, adding finishing touches that only I and Lorenzo would know to watch for. Each brushstroke was loaded with meaning, each shadow coated with truth. Pietro's men watched me nervously, unsure of what their master's fury might unleash. By evening, as the patrons began to arrive, I felt my heart hammer, not from fear, but from anticipation. Pietro, pompous and gleaming, was already boasting to the early arrivals. Lorenzo leaned close. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. "I've never been more ready," I whispered. My fingers brushed against his as I adjusted the drapery covering the painting. The contact sent a shiver through me, trust, excitement, and something far more intimate. He smiled faintly, leaning in just enough to whisper, "After tonight, you will never be invisible again. And neither will your courage." I inhaled, steadied myself, and reached for the cord to unveil the painting. Pietro's eyes were bright with anticipation, unaware that the very brilliance he coveted would be his undoing. The canvas fell. The gasps, the murmurs, the shock, all perfectly timed. Under the lights, the confession became clear. Pietro's fraud exposed, his name diminished, my talent undeniable. Pietro turned, pale, sputtering, his empire of lies collapsing in real time. And Lorenzo, standing close, hand brushing mine again, gave me a small, knowing smile that promised the rest of our story had only just begun. The morning after the unveiling, the studio felt different, alive in a way it had never been when Pietro held the brush. The sunlight streamed across the floorboards, catching the gold dust that clung to my fingers. Every stroke I'd painted in secret, every shadow, every hidden confession, had done its work. Pietro's smug empire of deceit had begun to crumble before the world. Marco brought tea to my side, but I barely noticed. My mind was on Lorenzo, who had stayed after the unveiling, his presence steady and unyielding, a shield against the chaos Pietro had tried to sow. "He's furious," Marco whispered, setting the cup down. "The patrons are buzzing. Pietro, he's been called a fraud in every letter sent to the Medici." I allowed a small smile to form. "Good. Let him squirm. Let the world see what his greed has done." The studio door opened. Lorenzo stepped in, dark coat brushing the threshold. His eyes scanned me, assessing, protective, and something deeper flickered there. Warmth, admiration, maybe even desire. "You've done more than save your reputation," he said quietly, stepping closer. "You've reclaimed yourself." I felt my cheeks warm under his gaze. "I didn't do it alone," I whispered, my fingers brushing his sleeve. He caught my hand, not pulling away. "And I won't leave your side. Not while Pietro still breathes." The word lingered between us, heavy and intimate. I swallowed, heart thundering. "Then stay. Not just as my ally, stay as you." Lorenzo's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. I think I might like that arrangement. We worked side by side that morning, preparing the studio for a new collection, a series of paintings to cement my name and ensure Pietro's lies were forgotten. But amidst the preparation, our hands brushed repeatedly, lingering touches that neither of us pulled away from. Every glance carried unspoken words, every shared smile a secret conversation. As midday approached, Pietro's presence became unavoidable. He stormed into the studio, face flushed, eyes wild. "Lucia, how dare you humiliate me? The Medici, the patrons, they're talking." "My name." "Your name," I interrupted, my voice calm and sharp, "was never yours to claim." And the world knows it now. He sputtered, stepping closer, hands shaking. I remained still, brush in hand, letting the calm I had nurtured over the past hours surround him like a wall he could not breach. Lorenzo stepped beside me, silent but imposing. His presence alone made Pietro hesitate. "Back away," Lorenzo said softly, but with authority that made Pietro take a half-step back. I caught Lorenzo's eye, and in that instant, the bond between us deepened. Protection, admiration, trust, and something more dangerous, more thrilling. My heart raced as he subtly brushed his fingers against mine, a promise of intimacy, of partnership, of shared victories to come. "I will leave when you are satisfied, Pietro," I said, my voice firm, steady. "But remember this. Every painting you ever stole will one day shine as it should. My name, my work, my legacy." Pietro's face twisted in rage, and he stormed from the studio, slamming the door behind him. I felt Lorenzo's hand slide over mine again, holding it lightly, grounding me. "You see what I meant," he murmured. "You paint with fire, and you've ignited it everywhere." I laughed softly, the sound unsteady, nervous, but genuine. "And you don't seem afraid of the flames." "I am not," he replied, his voice dropping low, almost a purr, a whisper that brushed my ear. "Especially not when I know you're the one controlling them." My breath caught. His presence, his nearness, stirred something deep within me. The studio, the paintings, Pietro's downfall, it all became background noise compared to the growing tension between us. Trust was building, and so was something far more intoxicating: desire. As he finally straightened, brushing imaginary dust from his coat, I realized something important. Lorenzo was no longer just an ally. He was the man whose eyes I wanted to meet first each morning, whose hand I wanted brushing mine at every opportunity, whose admiration and fire I longed to earn. And Pietro, powerless now, was merely a shadow behind the brilliant light of what we were beginning together. The morning air in Florence had a crisp bite, carrying the faint scent of oil paint and wet cobblestones. I stood at my studio window, gazing out at the bustling streets, feeling the pulse of the city, like the steady beat of a drum. The unveiling had shaken Pietro, but I knew the storm was far from over. He was a man who would claw and scheme until the last brushstroke of his deceit had been revealed to the world. "Miss Lucia?" Marco's voice brought me back. He held a tray with water and brushes, but I barely noticed. "The messenger just arrived. Pietro demands a private viewing. He says he needs to see for himself." I allowed a slow, deliberate smile. "Then we'll let him see. Every second he wastes gloating is a second closer to his ruin." The studio door opened. Lorenzo entered quietly, as he always did, his presence a comforting weight against the tension I felt. His eyes scanned the room, resting on the canvas with an intensity that made my pulse race. "He's coming," I said, brushing my hair behind my ear, conscious of every inch of him. "And he's angrier than ever." Lorenzo's gaze softened, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Good. Let him be furious. It will make his downfall all the sweeter." Hours later, Pietro arrived, flanked by two men whose stern expressions barely hid their unease. He moved with arrogance, expecting obedience, expecting fear. But I met him head-on, unflinching. "Lucia," he said, voice slick with false charm, "you dare continue to defy me?" "I dare," I replied, voice steady. "Because this time, I control the canvas. Every stroke is mine. Every shadow is mine. And the truth will no longer hide in the light you thought you owned." Pietro's lips twitched with fury. He stepped closer, leaning toward me with a predatory grace. "And you think Lorenzo here will let you humiliate me further?" Lorenzo moved beside me, silent but formidable. His gaze locked onto Pietro, unyielding. "I will not let you touch her," he said, voice calm, but with an authority that made Pietro hesitate. I felt a spark run through me, a thrill of trust, and something far more dangerous. Lorenzo's proximity was intoxicating, a tether keeping me steady as Pietro's arrogance wavered. "You've already humiliated me," Pietro hissed, his hands trembling. "You think the patrons will forgive this? My name will fade," I said, finishing his sentence for him, "because it was never yours to claim." Lorenzo's hand brushed mine, subtle, electric, and I shivered under the contact. Our eyes met, a silent conversation passing between us. Trust, admiration, and the beginnings of something more. Desire, maybe, tinged with something deeper. Recognition. Pietro's face paled as he finally realized the truth. He sputtered, trying to defend himself, but the weight of exposure crushed him before he could speak. Lorenzo's presence was a barrier, his calm strength turning my defiance into power. As Pietro stormed from the studio, slamming the door behind him, I turned to Lorenzo. He stepped closer, hand still lightly touching mine. "You are magnificent," he whispered. "Not just for the painting, but for standing your ground." I let out a soft laugh, my heart still racing. "And you were magnificent yourself." Silent, calm, terrifyingly competent. His lips curved in a faint smile. "Perhaps I am better when I stand beside you." I felt warmth creep up my neck. "And perhaps," I said, my voice low, "I work better with someone who believes in me." He leaned just slightly closer, the air between us charged. "Then we shall continue this partnership," he murmured, "both in art and everything else." I could only nod, breathless, aware that this was more than trust. More than strategy. It was a bond forged in fire, shadows, and stolen moments. And Pietro? He would never see the last stroke coming. The gallery buzzed with anticipation. Florence's elite had gathered, whispers bouncing off the high ceilings like restless spirits. Tonight was the night the hidden confession would finally be revealed, the stroke of genius that would unmask Pietro's theft and solidify my name once and for all. I adjusted the drapery on the centerpiece painting, my hands steady despite the racing of my heart. Marco hovered nearby, nervously polishing the frame. "Miss Lucia, are you certain this will work?" "Pietro, he's desperate." I smiled faintly, brushing a stray lock of hair from my face. "Yes. The light, the angle, they will see everything. And Pietro will have nowhere to hide." Before I could breathe a moment of relief, Lorenzo appeared at the doorway, dark coat sweeping behind him. He moved closer, voice low, commanding yet gentle. "I will be by your side. No one will touch you, not even the shadows Pietro casts." I felt my pulse quicken, a heat spreading through me. His presence was like gravity, grounding, protective, intimate. "I wouldn't have it any other way," I admitted softly. Moments later, Pietro arrived, flanked by a few influential patrons he hoped would shield him from embarrassment. He sauntered toward the painting, smug confidence plastered on his face. "Ah, Lucia," he said, voice smooth and condescending. "Ready to prove me wrong again?" "I've never been more ready," I replied, stepping closer to Lorenzo, letting our fingers brush just slightly. The contact was electric, a silent promise that he had my back. The crowd hushed as the drapery fell away. At first, the painting appeared as before, a masterful work of beauty and depth. Pietro's smirk faltered as the light shifted, striking the canvas at the precise angle I had orchestrated. Slowly, the hidden confession emerged, delicate lines forming words that revealed every stolen brushstroke, every lie he had told, every masterpiece he had claimed as his own. Gasps echoed across the gallery. Pietro's eyes widened in shock. The patrons whispered furiously, some stepping closer to read the intricate confession, their admiration directed entirely at me. This cannot be," Pietro stammered, voice breaking with fury. I am a fraud," I finished firmly, stepping forward. "And the world sees it now. Your name belongs to no painting here, but your own mediocrity." He stumbled backward, pale and trembling, and I felt Lorenzo's hand brush mine once more, grounding me, reminding me that I was no longer alone. His eyes, dark and intense, held mine for just a moment, a mixture of pride, admiration, and something deeper. "Magnificent," he murmured, leaning close enough for me to feel the warmth of his breath. "Every stroke, every secret, you've done it flawlessly." My heart fluttered. I couldn't have done it without knowing someone believed in me. I admitted, voice soft, almost a whisper. "You had me from the first brushstroke," he replied, a teasing glint in his eyes. "And now, I suppose I have the honor of watching the genius unfold." Pietro, humiliated beyond measure, could only retreat, muttering empty threats as the crowd turned away, their admiration fixed entirely on me. Lorenzo gently pressed my hand, fingers intertwining, and I felt a thrill of joy and something more intimate, tender, yet electrifying. "Come," he said softly. "Let's leave him to his shadows." I nodded, resting my head slightly against his shoulder as we walked through the gallery, the murmurs of admiration following us. In that moment, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about trust, partnership, and a spark that had been kindling quietly, now blazing. And as we stepped into the evening light together, I knew one thing for certain. Pietro's betrayal had only illuminated the path to the man I was meant to stand beside, brush in hand, heart in sync, ready for whatever came next. The morning after the gallery unveiling, the studio was unusually quiet. The city still buzzed with news of Pietro's exposure, but I knew the storm wasn't fully over. A man like him doesn't accept humiliation quietly. He waits, biding his time, plotting his next move. Marco moved nervously near the window. "Miss Lucia, Pietro's lawyers are here. They want you to sign a retraction." I let out a soft, humorless laugh. "A retraction? After the world has already seen the truth?" I shook my head. "No, Marco. This time, he will do nothing but watch as his empire collapses." Before Marco could reply, the studio door opened, and there he was, Pietro, looking even more desperate than the night before. He carried himself with false authority, but I could see the tremor in his hands, the panic behind his eyes. "Lucia," he hissed, stepping closer. "You think this is over? You think a little trick of light will ruin me completely? Sign here, or face consequences." I set down my brush and met his gaze, unwavering. "Consequences?" I echoed, voice calm and cold. "You are already living them. Every patron knows the truth. Every letter in Florence now bears my name, my talent, my legacy, not yours." He lunged forward, anger bubbling over. But before he could make another step, Lorenzo appeared, his presence sudden and commanding. His hand gripped Pietro's shoulder, a silent but unmistakable warning. "Back away," Lorenzo said, voice low, dangerous. "You will touch her not a single time, Pietro. Or you will answer to me." Pietro froze, faltering under Lorenzo's intensity. The air between them was thick with tension, and I realized just how much I had come to rely on this man. His protective aura wrapped around me, fierce and unyielding, and I felt a thrill at the closeness of his presence. "You always stand in my way," Pietro spat, glaring at Lorenzo. "I stand where she needs me," Lorenzo replied, his eyes dark and unwavering. "And right now, that means keeping you exactly where you are, powerless." I stepped forward slightly, letting my hand brush Lorenzo's again, the warmth spreading through me. "Thank you," I murmured, though Pietro's gaze was still fixed on me, trying to intimidate. Lorenzo's lips curved into a faint smile, brushing his thumb across my knuckles. "It's nothing. But I hope you know, I am not just protecting your reputation. I am protecting you." My heart skipped a beat. I know." My voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the electric current of intimacy passing between us. "And I trust you." Pietro, sensing the unbreakable alliance between us, finally faltered completely. He turned on his heel, muttering threats I didn't need to hear, and stormed from the studio, his empire crumbling behind him. I exhaled deeply, relief washing over me, and Lorenzo closed the distance between us. His hand lingered in mine, fingers intertwining with a familiarity that made my chest tighten in the best possible way. "You are incredible," he murmured, leaning just slightly closer. "Every brushstroke, every clever line. I think I might be falling for the genius and the woman behind it." I laughed softly, breathless, looking up at him. "You might be?" I teased, letting the warmth of the moment wash over me. His eyes sparkled with mischief and affection. "I am certain," he said, voice low, almost a whisper. "And if I'm allowed, I'd like to be part of every masterpiece you create, on the canvas and in life." My lips curved in a smile, heart racing. "Then you shall have that honor," I said softly. The studio, once a battlefield of deceit and stolen glory, now felt alive with possibility, with trust, and with a spark that promised love. Pietro had lost, and I had found not only my name, but a man who would stand beside me, and, perhaps, eventually, inside my heart. The morning sun streamed through the studio windows, painting everything in gold. Florence felt different today, charged with the electricity of victory. Pietro's attempts at sabotage had failed completely. His lies lay exposed, his reputation shattered, and I finally felt the weight of years of stolen recognition lifting from my shoulders. Marco bustled about, carrying brushes and paint thinner, trying to keep the studio organized. "Miss Lucia, the news that's everywhere. They're calling you the true genius behind Pietro's so-called masterpieces." I smiled, allowing myself a moment of satisfaction. "It's finally over, Marco. Truly over." Before I could savor it further, Lorenzo appeared in the doorway, his usual composed presence tempered by a rare, soft smile. "It's over for him," he said, his voice calm, yet filled with warmth. "And for you, it's just the beginning." I let out a relieved breath, feeling my pulse settle. "I couldn't have done it without you, Lorenzo. Every step of the way, your presence, it's been more than just support. I trust you more than I ever thought possible." His eyes softened, a flicker of vulnerability touching his gaze. "You've earned it, and you've earned more than that. You've earned someone who admires not just your talent, but you, every brilliant, fiery, stubborn part of you." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. I think I've found that too," I admitted, my fingers brushing against his as we stood near the grand canvas. The intimacy between us was undeniable, electric, yet tender. Lorenzo stepped closer, his hand cupping mine, thumb tracing gentle circles. "Then let's leave the past behind, together. No more shadows of Pietro, no more stolen recognition." I leaned into him slightly, feeling a shiver of excitement and relief. Together, I agreed. "We'll face everything side by side." He lowered his face toward mine, and I caught my breath. His eyes searched mine, dark and earnest, filled with admiration and desire. "You've painted your own destiny, Lucia, now let me be part of it. Every masterpiece, every triumph, every moment." I smiled, heart fluttering. I think that is a fate I could embrace. And then, finally, he kissed me. It was slow, deliberate, a perfect mixture of tenderness and passion. Every worry, every betrayal, every shadow of Pietro's deceit seemed to melt away in that moment. The studio, our sanctuary, our battlefield, our stage, became a place of warmth and trust, where two hearts who had fought so hard could finally meet freely. When we finally pulled away, his forehead rested against mine, our breaths mingling. "You are extraordinary," he murmured, "and I will make sure the world never forgets it. And neither will I." I laughed softly, brushing a paint-stained hand over his cheek. "Nor will I forget you, Lorenzo. Not for a single day." Together, we stepped back to admire the canvas, the masterpiece that had revealed the truth, that had reclaimed my name. Pietro's shadow had faded completely, replaced by trust, passion, and the certainty that we would face everything together. As the afternoon sun bathed the studio in golden light, I realized that my rebirth had led me not only to justice, but to love, fierce, protective, and unwavering. And in Lorenzo's arms, I finally understood what it meant to be truly free. The past was gone. The present was ours. And the future? It was an open canvas, ready to be painted together.